hole. You can't remove the hole to these two things unless you go and make your own firewall rules. You can't do it. There's nothing in the configurator to do it. Okay, we're going to come back to UDP blocking, but let's look at this other advanced function. Okay, the other advanced function is something called stealth mode. Okay, your Apple has a built-in stealth mode. This is so badass. Okay, look at this. Enable stealth mode. Ensures that any uninvited traffic receives no response, not even an acknowledgement that the computer exists. Stealth mode's got to be the strongest freaking firewall. Stealth mode's got to like close all those other holes. Stealth mode's definitely got to get rid of the holes to those two things, and it's got to definitely fix. I mean, stealth mode should be pretty amazing, right? I mean, stealth mode. Okay. This is stealth mode. What's it do? You click on enable stealth mode, okay, and it's and here's us clicking, and we can scan our target. The UDP port scan shows change in behavior. If I were to port scan, I see no change in behavior. None of the UDP holes have been closed up, nothing. You can definitely get a response out of UDP ports. You can definitely get a response when you nmap and do a UDP scan. Okay, so maybe they just weren't thinking about UDP. Maybe it's an ICMP thing, okay? What does ICMP do? ICMP scan, pings no longer get through. You can't ping this Mac anymore. Note, it took advanced function to turn off ping? Okay, but fine, you can't ping it anymore. The thing is, timestamp requests, netmask requests, oh, I don't know, these are the other two ICMP ping options in nmap, so they're kind of well known. These still walk right through. Well, why? Stealth mode added one rule. One rule! What's the one rule? The one rule is it says, listen, nothing can come in if it's a ping. If it's an echo request. Echo requests denied. Everything else, talk about Maginot Line, man. Okay, everything else, timestamp request, everything. All the other ICMP allowed right in. So you can do anything but send a ping. That's a pretty badass stealth mode. Okay, so timestamp requests, nmap minus PE, netmask requests, PM, you can still find all the apples on the network. Feel free to try. Have fun. Okay, so let's remember, when I say that this is either deceptive or at least the person doesn't understand TCP/IP, and I do mean like the whole thing, not TCP. Okay, I meant it. I can get a response. This is not a stealth mode. Ensures any invited traffic receives no response. I can get a response with two different types of ICMP, and I can do it with easy UDP packets. Okay, so you're all thinking, listen, Jay, everybody knows this. Is this really new? Everybody knows this. Thank you, Rich. Gentlemen, Rich Lindbergh. Clap, please. Rich, we'll be seeing you at Security Opus. So you think everybody knows this who has a Mac, and the thing is, actually, most of us don't. And maybe it's a usability thing. Maybe the system's just so easy to use we don't look. But we're security people. We go to conferences solely about security, and I'm telling you, most of us don't know this. Most of us haven't looked. Most of the speakers at your security conferences who are carrying Macs around, they don't know this. And lots of them even had, 20% of them even had their firewalls off. That 20% number is pretty, But really, I mean, we just didn't check because we were expecting a lot more out of a Unix. Okay, so this is the rest of the firewall rules. I'm not really going to go into them too much. I'm not going to go line by line, but I'll bring up a couple more highlights. You can see in yellow that these are the lines that are interesting to me. Okay, I'll let you take a good long look for just a sec. Okay, what holes? I've got rules that open up a few more holes. I've got a rule that opens up a hole for a DNS server that I'm not running. It says any packets are allowed in as long as they're destined for 53. Okay? I've got a hole that opens up access to my print server that I'm not sharing. I've got a hole open up for SVR lock, for SVR loc, which is part of Bonjour, and I don't see anything listening on the port. I'm not sure why it has to be there. Maybe it's offered by the kernel. Anybody know? Any Apple kernel hackers in here? Okay. And I've got something open for Samba. I've got 137 open up for Samba. I haven't told Samba that I'm exporting shares. I haven't tried to mount anything, and I've got a hole open already. What's up with that? The GUI's not giving you a good firewall. The GUI isn't giving you a good firewall, but the nice thing is, this really is Unix. You really can roll your own. You don't have to write any custom code. You pop up a shell prompt. You sudo up to root, or sudo and build your own firewall, and you can build your own thing. Now I'm going to show you Bastille, and Bastille comes with a firewall which is configurable. There are also a whole bunch of third-party things you can download, but you can really do it pretty easily. If you wanted to right now, if you're kind of racing the people who are port scanning, I know the port scanning is probably already over. Some of you have moved on to exploitation. I don't want to know about it. But for those of you that are racing to, like, wait, I could be number 6 in this guy's list, I still have a chance, right? Well, you go through and literally delete the firewall lines that are opening up the holes. So here are 2 commands, here are the next 4, and you've kind of started to clean up your firewall. Oh. Sorry. My bad. Okay. So I'm also going to put up Bastille after this talk, and you can use its firewall. I'm going to talk about a few other Apple security issues. How are we doing on time? Yes?
Real quick before you move on.
Real quick.
When in the boot process are the IP firewall rules set?
When in the boot process, the question is, when in the boot process are the IP firewall rules set?
If I wanted to delete those rules instantly.
And if you wanted to delete them instantly and replace them? Answer. This is really embarrassing. I'm going to say it in a room full of people, so I'm going to take a drink first. I don't know. I have Googled and I just can't find out. As far as I can tell, it's got to be something kernel or whatever. I don't know. I don't know where this rule set. I've been able to find the configuration file where this is stored. I can't figure out how to reverse engineer that configuration file to go and remove things. I can go and add new holes, but I can't necessarily make it exactly what I want. I don't know what's building the rule set. So with that said, again, through more Googling, I found out that everyone who's built the rule set has basically done this. You create a new whatever you want, system starter, RC, launch D. You pick. I chose system starter, so has everybody else that I've Googled. And you basically just put something else in. It's going to get started on boot, and that something else will put new rules in. And those new rules override the original. Those new rules override Apple's. After that, the configurator doesn't try to screw with you because it says, oh God, you've changed something. Once you change something, their configurator gives up. I would bust, but I understand that that's a reasonable thing to do. It's actually hard to go and suck in a firewall rule set, make sense of it, and decide what to do. That's not so bad. It's not that hard, but it's hard enough that I'm not going to fault them for it. Okay, let me move on. Bonjour. So you've got access to Bonjour on every system. If I had to pick a port that I would interrogate first on, if I had to pick, well, this is kind of probably the first one. One of the first ports I'd interrogate on any Mac, if I was just port scanning, I found one and I was like, evil and, you know, I don't know how illegal, so I'm not going to do it. But if I was interrogating something on my own Mac and trying to figure out what other people could do to me, I talked to 5353. It's allowed from and everywhere to everywhere. The system really wants to get traffic on 5353. What do I find out? There are a few things I can find out. The very first thing I can find out that kind of scared me is I can find out your OS X security update level. What does that mean? Well, it's kind of like knowing what patches you got installed. Okay? So that means I can figure out what patch bundle level you're up to. And that tells me whether or not you're vulnerable and whether I should spend my time trying to exploit you or not. Okay, well, anybody been to DEF CON? Raise your hand if you've been to DEF CON. We really do have a lot of newbies in here. Okay, DEF CON is this wonderful thing called the Wall of Sheep. Everybody remember what the Wall of Sheep is? The Wall of Sheep is this nice little scrolling list of all the passwords, of all the usernames, and part of the password that was captured by sniffing traffic off of wireless. Oh, and Bluetooth too. But they capture off wireless, and they man in the middle where they can. That Wall of Sheep, and every so often you see people's pictures up. Like a couple of years ago, there was a picture up of a guy and it said, I am a Cisco security engineer, or something like that. Okay, so the Wall of Sheep is always fun to watch, and now it's on video, but it used to just be like this, it used to be on paper, like people just walk up and be like, this guy, this password, and it's really scary, the people whose names ended up on there. There are lots of unencrypted protocols, you sometimes don't realize you're using them. Anyway, I've got a new kind of Wall of Sheep. It's of patchless sheep. It's all the people I found on this conference network that weren't fully patched. We could just put it up. Okay, that's not hard to do. We just talk to 5353. What else do we get? Next, if we talk to Bonjour, we can find out your machine name. This is kind of nice because often these machines are named after the first account created on the system. So when I when I interrogate it and it says Simples G4, I'm like, oh, hey, I think I know who to take a picture of who's unpatched. Okay, so that's very useful for the Wall of Sheep. And then lastly, I can get your machine hardware type, which now that we have two hardwares and we got G3s, G4s, and we've got the new Core Duos, we've got different versions of the Core Duos. So if I want to tune my exploits to your particular, if I want to tune my shell code to your particular machine, it'd be good to know what your machine architecture is, which might also be useful if I'm going to put you on the wall of sheep. So, you know, we could have some fun with this. Bonjour is very friendly. There are lots of applications which can tell you a lot by Bonjour. It's really nice. iTunes, these are all like sharing. Okay, what else? Bluetooth. Okay, I always look at the Bluetooth configuration on a box. By default, I take my new Mac, I create a second account on it, as I always do. I think it happens on the first, but I don't have any Virgin OS X systems right now. But, you know, I take it and Bluetooth's on. Okay, this is set on a per user basis. So if you create a second user, that second user is going to have it on by default. What else? The machine's marked discoverable. What does that mean? It means I pop up my little machine and I pop up my machine, I turn on Bluetooth, and I start finding Macs in the room by another method. Okay, the encryption's off, user auth is not always present. This is Bluetooth for a new user. Okay, go right here, turn it off, make it non-discoverable, do it now, please. Okay, what else? There are three more issues. Weak user security. The first one is, look at this. I run ID, it says I'm user J. Okay? I walk into /users, I do an ls, and I look at ls of one of the other users, of this user called new blue. I can see in his home directory. Turns out the UMask on the system makes it so that I can actually walk in and read all the other read the files of every other user on the system. Luckily, there aren't too many multi-user systems here. But, you know, I don't know, you may have a family member who wants to see all of your files that you may not want to share with. So this may not be what's great. You may have a coworker that has an account on the same system. This isn't what I love. Auto login's on by default. Okay, well, you know, that's pretty common, but I'd still like to see a little bit better. What else? The first user on any Mac system, okay, this is the Trojan horse risk. The first user created on any Mac system basically owns the applications folder. That means they can Trojan any application on the system. Okay, you're like, well, why do I care? I don't have a multi-user system. Well, the reason you care is you started up with your non-root first user account. You said, I'm not root, so I can't really do any damage. If my browser gets bitten by the next vulnerability in Firefox, sorry, that's no problem. What are they going to do? They're getting one user. They're not getting root. Actually, they're getting a lot more than that. As that one user, because it's the first user is an admin user. First user can replace everything on the system. Okay, so all of you are going to, right now, those of you who haven't created a second user, you're going to create a second user, right? You guys are going to, please? You have already. He says he has already. Okay, so you're going to create a second user, and that second user is non-admin, and when you want to install software or whatever, you'll type your username and password in. It works really well, and you're going to do that. The problem is, you still end up with a problem that the software that you gets owned by that user. What does that mean? Well, all the stuff that user installs can still be Trojan. It's better, but it's not perfect. This is just me complaining. So I'm done with complaining. Let's talk about what we can do in terms of defense. Okay? So Bastille and OS X. I'm going to give you tonight a beta. I will tell you the beta doesn't break anything. The beta is a beta because I don't have an installer for it yet. I have a shell script installer, but I don't have a fancy schmancy installer yet. Oh, and one other thing that you'll see later, which is that you've got to start up the, thank you, you've got to start up the front end, and you've got to start up the back end separately. But here's here's what Bastille for OS X does. Who's heard of Bastille before? Okay, most of you. This is good. Then I won't get too far into it. But Bastille can audit the system. It can harden a system that